Hey everyone, it's me, Matt. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing great, and I hope you're ready to garden with me today because in today's video, we're doing part 2 of my backyard renovation project, and we're going to plant up my newly installed raised metal garden beds with some vegetable plants and some flowering plants. So let's get into it. So in the event you missed my last video, I just finished a complete renovation of this space a few weeks ago. I transformed this area of my backyard from a complete eyesore into this beautiful raised garden bed area. If you haven't already watched that video, make sure to check it out. In the video, I shared the entire process on how I completed this renovation project. I'll make sure to link that video in the video description for reference. Also, we're going to be working with this raised bed over here in my fire pit area. This bed was also installed at the same time as the other 3 beds we just looked at. And then I wanted to mention we've had 2 really good rainstorms since these raised beds were installed, and there actually wasn't a whole lot of soil settling. You'll remember I had set aside these 3 bags of soil just in case I needed to top the beds off, but it looks like I won't need to after all. So moving on to all the plants we'll be using for today's project, you can see I've got quite the assortment of vegetable and herb plants, along with a few flowering plants. There's a total of 28 plants here, and I actually grew 19 of them from seed. So looking at all the plants I grew from seed first, we'll start here with these nice big broccoli plants. I've got a total of 6 of them here. One of these containers has 2 plants in it. These broccoli plants are an heirloom variety called Waltham 29. They're supposed to produce 4 to 6 inch broccoli heads, and they're known for producing prolific side shoots. So this is actually a broccoli plant of the same variety that I started from seed back in September of 2023. Yes, you heard that right, September of 2023. And if you didn't already know, broccoli is a cold weather crop, so I have no explanation how it made it through the heat of Florida's summer without bolting. But here we are 18 months later, and it's still going for it. So this plant has been through a lot over the last year and a half. Aside from making it through 2 hurricanes, both Helene and Milton, it's lived its entire life in this 1 gallon container on my back patio in full sun. Again, I don't know why it didn't bolt. And another funny thing, it also never produced any broccoli last year, but I actually just noticed this week it's finally starting to push some broccoli florets. You can see the ones at the top here and here, and it also looks like it's pushing some side shoots too. So anyways, it's finally come full circle after all these months, and I'm thinking I might just let it go to seed because what if I've got some hybrid anomaly heat tolerant broccoli plant here? It might be worth it to try and save some of the seeds from it for next year. Also, I have been dealing with a small aphid problem on this plant. I think I've got it under control, but if not, that's yet another reason to let it go to seed. And because of that aphid problem, I won't be adding that broccoli plant into any of my new raised garden beds. I'm keeping it separate for now, but I still wanted to share that little background story with you. That broccoli plant has been quite the anomaly in my garden. So moving on to the next plant variety I grew from seed, I've got these 2 Alaska variegated nasturtiums. I absolutely love their variegated leaf color, and I can't wait for them to bloom. You can see I've already got some nasturtium plants planted in my tomato bed toward the back here. These are obviously a different variety because their leaves aren't variegated, but they're still really beautiful. But I think these 2 variegated ones are even prettier, and they'll add even more color and texture to my new raised bed area. Also, another quick side story, it's kind of funny. I originally planted about 20 of these Alaska variegated nasturtium seeds, and only 4 plants germinated. 3 of them were actually nasturtium plants, and 1 was this pea plant, which I thought was a little odd, but we're going with it. So at this point, you might be thinking, what happened to the 3rd nasturtium plant? And the answer is, it was recently dug up and killed by a squirrel, leaving me with only 2 variegated nasturtiums and 1 pea plant. I also wanted to quickly mention the nasturtium seed packet recommended soaking the seeds for 12 hours before planting, which I did, so I have no idea what happened to all the other plants. In any case, I'm really happy to have what I have, and I'll be including all 3 of these plants somewhere in my new raised garden beds today. And I'm really excited to see what this pea plant turns into because I have no idea what variety it is. So continuing on, the next plant variety I grew from seed are these buzz buttons. They're also referred to as Szechuan flowers or toothache plants. These are a low-growing herbaceous perennial in the daisy family, and the coolest part about this plant is the flowers are edible, and when you eat them, they sort of give a numbing, tingling, effervescent sensation in your mouth, hence the names buzz buttons and toothache plants. So I actually got the seeds for these plants from a friend who owns a bar down the street from my house. He got his hands on some dried buzz button flowers. I guess one of the newer trends in the culinary world is using them as garnishes in drinks since they have that numbing, tingling effect. Long story short, I took one of the dried flowers home, broke it up over some dirt, and grew my own buzz button plants. So, turning our attention now to the last plant variety grown from seed, I've got 7 pink Terrania plants. They're obviously not blooming yet, but these plants are one of my favorite heat and humidity loving summer annuals. If you watched part 1 of my raised bed renovation project, then you know these are the plants that I dug up from the old lawn in my new raised garden bed area. These plants are prolific self-seeders, and I figured I'd incorporate them into my new raised garden beds. And I think I'm actually going to set 3 of them aside to plant over in this veggie garden area too. So now let's look at all the plants I picked up from the garden center the other day. First up, I picked up a handful of different herbs. I've got 2 English lavender plants, which I'm really excited to try in my garden. Lavender likes really well-draining soil, so I'm thinking they'll do really well in my raised beds. Next, I've got this rosemary plant. Rosemary is one of my favorite herbs to use in the kitchen, and it's also really easy to grow, so I'm really happy to be adding it into one of my raised beds too. And then rounding out my herb plants, I've got these garlic chives. I love their smell, and I love to chop them up and whip them into cream cheese for bagels. Lastly, I picked up 4 pepper plants. There's 4 different varieties here. I've got a red Cajun bell, a yellow bell, and a green bell, as well as this jalapeno plant. You can also see the red Cajun bell is already forming peppers, which is really exciting to see. And really quick, it's worth mentioning the red Cajun bell and jalapeno pepper plants will do really well during Florida's hottest summer months in July and August, but the green and yellow bells are more heat sensitive and could experience heat stress and stop producing peppers. Typically, early April is the last opportunity to get them in the ground in order to get a good harvest before it gets too hot later on in the season. So now that we've reviewed all my plants, let's get them all placed in my new raised garden beds. So starting with the bed in the back closest to the house, that one gets the most sun, so that's where I'm going to put my 4 pepper plants. I'm also going to add my rosemary plant on the side closest to the patio. And then in the middle, closer to the edges, I'm placing one of my nasturtium plants and 1 Terrania plant. My goal is for those to cascade and spill over the sides of the bed. Looking at the lavender placement next, I'm going to put those plants toward the side of the 2 bigger beds closest to the walkway. I want them close to the walkway so that as you walk by them, you can brush up against them, releasing their lavender scent. Next, I'm placing 4 of the broccoli plants in the middle bed. This bed gets morning sun and afternoon shade since it's protected by the large red Hawaiian tea plants. The afternoon protection should help prevent these broccoli plants from bolting by reducing the heat stress later on this season. Then in the center of my broccoli plants, I'm placing one of my chive plants, and then I'm placing the pea plant toward the side closest to the patio. I'm also going to use some bamboo to make a small trellis for it to climb on. For the smaller circular bed toward the front, I'm placing a broccoli plant in the center, and then I'm surrounding it with the second nasturtium, some Terrania plants, and one of the buzz button plants. Lastly, looking at my fire pit bed, I'm placing my last broccoli plant in the center, surrounded by my second chive plant, my other 2 buzz button plants, and a Terrania plant. And then, like I said earlier, I'm setting aside the remaining Terrania plants so I can plant them in my other vegetable garden area on the other side of my patio. So now for the fun part, I've got my hand shovel and some slow-release plant tone fertilizer, so let's get everything planted in the ground. So there we go, everything's all planted and watered in. I'm so excited to have all my raised beds filled with beautiful plants. I love how these beds turned out, and they're only going to look better as we get further along into the season. So taking a closer look at my pepper bed, you can see how I spaced my pepper plants far enough apart so they'll have plenty of room to spread as they grow and mature. I also think the variegated nasturtium and the pink terrania plants will add some really nice color alongside my pepper plants. And then my rosemary plant has plenty of room to really fill in the space toward the side of the bed. You'll also notice the Captain Jack's Bug and Slug Killer granules that I proactively sprinkled not only in this bed but all my other beds. This is my favorite pest control product. It's formulated for organic gardening and safe to use around people and pets. So giving you a close-up now of my middle bed, you can see I've spaced my broccoli plants similar to my pepper plants, giving them plenty of room to fill in this bed. I also staked all the broccoli plants off camera. I used bamboo stakes and green garden tie tape to give them some extra support. You can see the two closest to the walkway are a little wilted from transplant shock. These are the ones that were in the same container. I disturbed their roots when I pulled them apart, but they should be able to bounce back just fine. Looking at the center here next, I like that I was able to squeeze in one of my chive plants. It's a little wilted at the moment too, but its normal upright growth habit should still allow plenty of room for my broccoli plants. And then over here, closer to the patio, I'm excited to see what becomes of my pea plant. I'm hoping it really takes off now that it's got this bamboo trellis to climb on. I also wanted to highlight the lavender plants in both beds. Once fully mature, these plants will be about 24 inches tall and wide. They're going to look so beautiful once they're big enough to sort of spill over the sides of both beds. Looking at this circular bed next, I'm so excited to see this one fill in. The broccoli in the center should get pretty big, but I'm really excited about all the flowers planted around it. The soft orange and yellow tones from the nasturtium and buzzbutton plants are going to look so good with the pink terrania flowers. And then coming over to the fire pit area, this bed is planted almost identically to the other circular bed, the main difference being that I swapped the nasturtium for a chive plant. And then another difference with this bed, this one will get more late afternoon sun, so I'm curious how much sooner this broccoli plant will bolt compared to the ones in the other beds that have more afternoon sun protection. This will be a nice little test to see which ones last longer. Lastly, coming over to the other side of my patio, I planted the remaining 3 terrania plants in this space. These terranias are really resilient and should have no problem establishing themselves in this area, and I think their bright pink blooms will add a nice pop of color in this space. And then really quick, when it comes to watering, these beds aren't hooked up to any irrigation, so I'll be hand watering them. You'll remember from the installation video, I ran irrigation tubing into all these beds so I could eventually add them to my drip system, but for now I'll hand water these plants as needed. It'll be more frequent for the first week or so, probably daily, but then I can back off to every 2 to 3 days once these plants root in. And then talking through fertilizing, I'm going to add all these plants into my water-soluble fertilization schedule in about 2 weeks. I'm going to use this Miracle-Gro plant food on the vegetable and herb plants, and then I'll use this Proven Winners water-soluble plant food on all the flowering plants. I'll be sure to link these fertilizers along with any of the products I used in this video in the video description for reference. So overall, I'm so thrilled with how this entire renovation project came together. Again, this space used to be an eyesore area of my backyard with bare patchy grass, and it's been totally transformed into something really beautiful. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me today, and hopefully I've inspired you to plant up a vegetable garden area somewhere in your yard. If you haven't already done so, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons so you can hang out with me in future videos. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.